need strong coffee or perhaps tea of the British flavor. Maybe a Lipton or Tetley or or Yorkshire tea.
Why are you testing me? Go ahead.
Seeing as we are going next
Get to the point.
Yeah, I see somebody also typed in the Gerald Horn book in the comments, Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kiss of love. Yeah, thank you. Karen is good. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you. This is a community effort. Thank you.
There we go. As they will say, each one teach one. So yes. Which brings me to the next point of conflict.
Oh Lord.
Kenya.
Is it breaking news?
I think he wants Kenya now.
Yes. Could you?
He's provoking you further.
He sure is.
Could we go to Nairobi International, Jomo Kenyatta International, please?
We have some breaking news. Hold on. Brace yourselves.
Excellent. Can't wait.
What do we hunt? As human beings, what do we hunt normally?
Prey.
Standard. What do we hunt?
The last time I checked, there was no jungle in Kenya.
No.
It's plain. It's plain. It's the plain lands, isn't it? What jungle?
Go ahead, brother. Are you handing it over to me, or you have a few words to say?
Oh, well, what can I say? I'm not quite familiar with that neck of the woods, and I would not want to
step on my toes.
Portray my imperialistic tendencies. So listen. I will yield the mic to you on that to that neck of the woods.
You cannot be an invader while criticizing invaders.
No. So what do you think? Was that a honest assessment of what transpired?
So
it is, yes.
The Kenya Land and Freedom Army.
Who is that?
The Kenya Land. Again, I will say. The Kenya Land and Freedom Army, who are demonized as the Mau Mau by the British and the rest of the West. I will say one more time, the audience, what they are truly known, what they called themselves, what our ancestors, my ancestors, because I am Kenyan, and my fellow Kenyans' ancestors, called themselves, and what their mission was: the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. So I'm going to, as I was preparing for the show, doing research, reading books, I wish I could show you the pile. And you know what? Later, once the show is over, you can come back to the chat, because I'll add all these books there for you all, because it is hard to stay in this moment of passion and do admin work for the live stream. So let's just make a deal right now. No more putting up book names, book titles. I will add them to the chat later. Come back later, subscribe, and I will also have there our Patreon, because this is so. My passion does not allow me to go to admin today. So I will put our Patreon account in the chat. I will put all the information you need in the chat. Come back later, subscribe, because by subscribing, you're supporting us. By supporting us, you're allowing us to continue doing this work. In fact, if you support us to the point where we actually can make an income from this and not be taken away by the 9-to-5 jobs, we can be here to do the research that is required to provide this information for you.
That would be too much.
Sorry,
that would be too much trouble.
No, let me give you a hard time.
He wants to be a troublemaker.
We won't be taken away to the 9-to-5. So you're admitting to the world that we are actually subsidizing the system by working for the man. You're admitting that.
I am admitting, unfortunately, that I am embedded in the social structure. I am embedded in capitalism. I am embedded. I am living with the invaders. Yes, unfortunately.
Yes, but that's what it takes for now. But I support what you're saying. If the people, the audience, can help liberate us, we also will be able to better liberate the audience.
And saying that also, for those of you who are following us in other platforms, Look out for our campaign. It's going to be going out on Monday. The goal is to have a minimum of 1,000 followers, because as you know how YouTube works, when you get to 1,000, you start making subscribers on YouTube. You start making money. You start generating income on YouTube. Listen, we're just trying to be real with you all. We need to make money in order to step away from the social structure and come and start providing you all with the information you need from an African perspective. So I'll go back to the topic for today. And like I was saying, when I was doing research, I got to one of the books I was reading, and I'll put the information. And I said,
Dedan Kimathi.
Yes, that is my ancestor. That is my hero.
He was considered a terrorist, wasn't it?
I am correcting that narrative. He is my ancestor. He is my hero. He fought for my freedom and the freedom of all Kenyans. He fought to get our land back. Our land.
Yep.
All right. Yep. So I got to a point where I was reading a letter. It was written by Warohio Itote. Warohio Itote was a member of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army.
Yep.
And at the moment when he wrote, the point where he was writing this letter, he was imprisoned by the British. And they called themselves at that point the Kenyan government, the Kenyan parliament. Yep. And so he writes this letter, and he means for it to go to Dedan Kimathi. And he's pleading with Dedan Kimathi. You can tell the letter has been written under duress. It is clear. If you want to analyze, if you see the language, for those of you who are skilled at doing that, you will tell, this man is not writing this letter. He has been instructed on what to put here.
Right.
So I'll read that letter, and then I'll go ahead and read the response that comes from the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. The members of the army who resided in Nyandarua, which is a part of Kenya, at the time, which is where Mzee Warohio, who is now in prison, was from, they reach out to Dedan Kimathi. They walk from Nyandarua to where Dedan Kimathi was. He was the leader of the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army. I mean, notice all these African ways, the respect, the protocol. They don't just decide by themselves. They walk to their leader's location and they share this news and they give him the letter. They let him know that Mzee Warohio is in prison and he has a letter for him. And then Dedan reads it, and collectively, they put together their response, and I will read it. I'm going to start with a letter from Mzee Warohio. And I will provide the information later again in the chat. If you come back, with this recording will be there, you'll find the information. All right. Dear Kimathi, you must have learned that on 15th January, I was injured and captured. I am now writing you. Yes, brother. Let's let the ancestor speak. I am now writing you from the police custody. I have tried to present our demands to the government through their interrogation. At this stage, I understand the government is quite willing to put down arms and discuss our difficulties, and if possible, settle them in peace. Firstly, I am very worried about the lives of our fighters, for we are losing hundreds of lives daily. If you agreed with me, we had better stop this bloodshed. Below are questions which the government has asked me. To answer these questions, I would like you to send 2 representatives from Nyandarua and 2 from Kirinyaga, who will answer the questions and negotiate about the general surrender in which I would be a participant. Why are you fighting? What must be done so that all fighters will come out of the forest with all their arms? What would you do if you fail to get land and freedom? If you achieved land and freedom, what would you do to Gatashia Boruri, which is Kikuyu for loyalist, traitors, home guards? Would you agree to suspend the fight during the talks? For the government is willing and ready to stop the fight until the end of the talks. Do you see this as a government trap? If you continue to fight to the last man's drop of blood, who would then be given land and freedom? I have promised the government that the talks will be successful, and now I expect to come to the end of our fight and try peaceful talks to settle our demands. Don't let me down on that account. Yours, Warohio Itote. As I'm reading that, and Brother Adesoji, as you point out, the 15th of January, I cannot help but realize that nothing is by coincidence. This letter was written by Warohio on the 15th of January, or he was imprisoned on the 15th of January. Today is the 15th of January. As I read this letter, I am thinking of Dr. King and the struggle and his movement, and today is his birthday. I'm telling you, audience, nothing is by coincidence. Nothing at all. So I continue to the response by the collective, by the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, because they have been asked by the British, under the disguise that this is coming from their brother Waruhiu Itote. They have been sent questions that they need to respond to. All right. Our ancestors speak. We are fighting for our lands. The Kenya Highlands, which was stolen from the Africans by the Crown through the Orders in Council 1915 of the Crown Lands Ordinance, which evicted Africans from their lands at present occupied by the settlers or reserved for their future generations, while landless Africans are starving of hunger or surviving on the same land as the cheap laborers to the settlers who were granted that land by the Crown. Let me catch my breath. Hold on. Before we come out of the forest, the British government must grant Kenya full independence under the African leadership and also hand over all the alienated lands to Kenya African government, which will redistribute the land to its citizens. If we do not get land and freedom now, we will continue to fight till the government yields or the last drop of blood of our last fighter is spilled. If we achieve land and freedom, we would forgive all the Vatashia Borori, that is the loyalist traitors, home guards, I call them today gatekeepers, for we are sure that they are either foolish or they have not other ways of ensuring their lives under your government other than to kill and destroy as instructed by your officers. We have a battle song, and here comes the African ways of knowing. We have a battle song which says, "Choose the whites, save the blacks, for they are working under their foolishness." After all, we are certain that all these loyalists are our real brothers, sisters, parents, in-laws, and our beloved friends. Blood is thicker than water. Our traditional beliefs cannot allow us to part with our relatives. The following Kikuyu saying will prove this to be true. Rorira, rotidaba gioroi, which means in English, the navel cord can never be washed away in a river. Meaning that one cannot under any circumstances deny his relative. Even if one went to wash himself in a river, he would still remain the same blood he is trying to denounce. Or, a Swahili saying, mwana wa nyoka ni nyoka, which means the snake's son is still a snake. Now it is wartime. And war means destruction of everything without recognizing children or their parents. War simply means taking away lives and wealth. The most civilized and advanced nations have failed to stop war as they believe the war is the only safeguard against slavery, oppression, and exploitation by others. War seems to be a natural rule, the survival of the fittest to all creatures. We are not going to stop fighting during the negotiation talks. Both will continue until an agreement is reached by our representatives in the talks, who could only convince us to stop fighting. Yes, we have seen that it is a government trap. They know at this point that the letter from Waruri was a trap. They are saying this right here. Yes, we have seen that it is a government trap, but we will throw a stick of wood in it and see its reaction. If we could release the spring, we shall walk over it safely. It is now almost 1.5 years since the declaration of the emergency. Every day since then, you have been trying your best to destroy us completely, using nearly 100,000 strong forces and dropping thousands of bombs on us from your jet fighters, Harvards, and the heavy Lincoln bombers. All your forces work day and night trying to finish us off, but our God is great, and you have not been successful, and you will not succeed. Though you think we are unarmed compared to your strength, we stand for right and God will defend the right. We are confident of our victory. Even if you kill all the Central Province people, the now quiet Kenya tribes will still demand land and freedom. I am one of those quiet Kenyan tribes, the Akamba. And yes, if I was living then and I found out that the Kikuyu were finished from the land and I knew the land was not ours, it had been taken. It was ours, but it had been taken. I would fight for the land. So it continues. It is inevitable. You may lose your empire in the course of impeding Kenya's independence. If you want us to negotiate with you, you must firstly disarm the home guards and remove your forces completely out of the Central Province, where they are killing women and children, raping and robbing them, and forcing them here in the forest to fight with us. Secondly, demolish the newly established unsanitary villages, police posts, and military bases, and let every person return to his former homestead. Thirdly, release all the revolution prisoners and detainees. Fourthly, open all the schools you have closed down. Again, they closed down the schools. Open all the schools you have closed down. Fifthly, bring D.N. Pritt, A.R. Kapila, and Ralph Bunch to the negotiation talks so that they will advise and draft our agreement. Finally, we would like to meet Mr. Jomo Kenyatta or his representative from Lokitaung, Mr. Chief Koinange, Mr. James Beata, Mr. E.W. Matho, MLC, Mr. WWW Awaori, MLC, and Mr. W. Odede, MLC. We demand the signatures of all the persons mentioned in this letter confirming their participation in the negotiation talks. There will be no negotiation talks in the absence of the above mentioned people. And our ancestors sign off. I hand it to you, brothers, to respond to those letters.
Okay, brilliant. I wanted to say just, a few things concerning the letter. The first thing I like to say is actually about Dedan Kimathi himself. The level of intelligence and sophistication has not been fully appreciated. Of course, he was seen as their leader, referred to as a field marshal, and a very capable leader. And this insurgency lasted for 7+ years. And yes, a whole decade. Yeah. And what did they face? They faced the British Army. They faced what they call the King's African Rifles, African soldiers from neighboring countries like Uganda, Sudan, brought in to fight against them. Troops brought from India to fight them. And yet they were winning against all these odds. And of course, ultimately they won because Kenya, they won partially. And that's our other issue, because the land issue has still not been resolved. But Kenya won formal independence because of the resistance in 1963. Kimathi was only 36 years old when he was executed on February 18, 1957. Imagine, 36, Our young people were very dynamic, very visionary in that era, which is a subject that we need to revisit when we couldn't do a whole show.
We have our extended conversations
on Africa's youth, and how they need to take examples from the generation of the Kimathis who were able to accomplish this in the 1950s. And then finally, my comment on the letter itself. The letter was the British really pleading, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't plead like that if you think this is a force that you can overwhelm. So at least at that point, the outcome of this war was not, even to the British, had not been resolved. They did not believe they could win militarily. Otherwise, you don't write a letter like that, And then I guess they managed to assemble overwhelming force from around the world to ultimately penetrate, infiltrate, get enough traitors to betray Kimathi. As you know, one of the individuals who revealed his whereabouts and got him wounded and captured was a fellow Kenyan, of course. And just as an aside, that individual was rewarded by the British with money, of course. He got his gold.
Mm.
And then he started a business, a trucking business. That trucking business went out of business because every Kenyan said nobody should do business with this traitor.
With this guy.
You
exactly.
See? And that to me is a lesson that is enduring, that we need to also learn in other situations when our fighters are betrayed. We should not reward those who betray them to the enemy. So that's the point I would like to make about this letter and the response.
Thank you for reading the letter. Again, history has a way of recording itself and stays with us without us actually noticing. It becomes part of what we are. There's a place in Nairobi called Kibera. There's a reason for the existence of Kibera. Kibera is a legacy of what that time entails, which was the fact that the British lived in segregated enclaves. The King's Rifles that you acknowledge that came in to help them, quote unquote, fight the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army were not even allowed to stay near the Europeans. So they literally had to stay on the gun range. Kibera used to be part of a gun range. So Kibera then extended out sideways because it couldn't go into the European reserved area. And what is Kibera today? It is one of the largest slums on the African continent, if not the world.
This is though. I will add, brother, quickly before hold on, Adesoji, quickly before you continue. I will add, because they use these terms. Language is very important.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
These.
Okay, sister, calm down.
Yes. We know who we are. The imperialists, brother Adesoji. Hold on, Adesoji. The imperialists. I want to speak on Kibera real quick, Adesoji, before you go on. We are at 3 minutes to the hour. We're going to be done at 1:30. So I will let you speak. Kibera, it is called a slum, but Kibera, if you're in Kenya, if you're visiting Kenya, is a place where you can go and eat amazing nyama choma. Nyama choma is grilled meat. You can go to Kibera and get beautiful braids if you're in Kenya. You can go to Kibera and shop some amazing African attire. So Kibera, although known as a slum, has a lot of richness in it. It has human beings in it. It has families, mothers, fathers, and children. Go ahead, brother.
Right. No, I just want to add to that too. I was going to say something about that too. And this is particularly for listeners, our audience. In our show here, so for example, you saw how we deconstructed that term, Mau Mau. The sister explained to you that was not a term native to Kenya. Nobody even knows what the word means. My own speculation is that this was a word designed by some British public relations experts who knew just a concocted African-sounding word that would invoke menace and peril. And that's how they came up with Mau Mau, to demonize the Kenyans. So on this show, we make it a habit to deconstruct anything and everything. So, the brother is right. Kibera is referred to as a slum. But when you hear terms like that, now you look at our sisters and brothers in Brazil. I forgot the name of that one. What's it called in Rio?
The favelas.
You go. Exactly. We need to challenge at any point, any terminology that the establishment have used to try to keep our people in a certain umbrella. So that was good.
So suffice to say, Kenya is living out a colonial legacy, as it is more than it is mostly a cash crop economy which means it produces stuff that it needs self-consume, but for the European market, tea, avocados, flowers, which you also know, fresh flowers.
Yep, that's
And
big multi-billion-dollar business. Yeah.
exactly. So if you go into any supermarket and you want to profess your love to your European maiden, you can get some fresh flowers from Kenya. Well, on a very lovely note, the land question does not stay just on the eastern side.